Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to go back to the past here in the Call of Duty franchise. With the Black Ops Cold War beta starting on PlayStation in just a few days, it's understandable for everybody to be looking towards the future and the next installment of the Call of Duty franchise, but I think it's also important that we take a look back at the games that have come before Black Ops Cold War and why Activision seemingly wants us all to forget that they ever existed. Over the course of the past few months, I've been doing a number of videos on older Call of Duty titles. It started off with the Legacy of Pro Perks video, where I dove deep into the now forgotten Pro Perk system and how it back then changed the entire Call of Duty franchise, and more recently I did a few videos on Black Ops 2 and how it's now completely hacked beyond repair. For these videos, and for some of my recent live streams, I would go back to these old games and man, it just feels bad. It feels bad every time I go back to play them now. What were once incredibly popular games with hundreds of thousands of active players on at any given time are now desolate wastelands with just a few dozen remaining players hoping to relive some long-lost memories. Black Ops 2 is a prime example of this. The game is widely considered by the community to be one of, if not the best Call of Duty title ever made. I've seen countless polls ran online, and Black Ops 2 is always voted as either number 1 or at the very least up in the top 3, maybe top 5, depending on the poll, but regardless, it's one of the most popular games ever, and look at what it's been reduced to. Because the game was released on the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3, which did not have the best security ever, hackers have overrun Black Ops 2, and that's basically why you run into them all the time when you try to play that game, though it is worth mentioning that occasionally you can have one of those nights where you only run into like 1 or 2 hackers with the rest of the lobbies being clean. The problem with the clean lobbies, however, is the game is so dead because of those hackers, right? Because of those people using mods and cheats and infections, and because of that, the only matches that you can play are usually team deathmatch on a horrible connection because the game has to expand matchmaking further and further across the world just to find enough people to fill your lobby. You take the hacker situation and then combine that with the fact that for some ungodly reason, the Season Pass for Black Ops 2 is still $50. You can see why Black Ops 2, and in fact most of the older Call of Duty games, are pretty much dead in the water. I've said a lot about Modern Warfare 2019 in the past, and Vaughn knows I'm going to say a lot more about it in the future, but one thing I will never deny is how great the monetization model is within that game. While stuff in the shop is wildly overpriced in Modern Warfare 2019, the fact that all the DLC maps are released for free on all platforms at the exact same time is amazing. We then look back at the old archaic map pack and season pass model, and this system not only sucked back in the day for the player base, but it continues to screw over fans even here in 2020. Let's look at Modern Warfare 2 for an example here. 10 years ago they released this game, and currently it's $20 on the Xbox Store, which between campaign, multiplayer, and Spec Ops, that really isn't the worst price point ever considering how good the campaign was for Modern Warfare 2, but let's look at the DLC. $15 a piece for the Resurgence pack and the Stimulus pack, both of which add 5 maps to the game's multiplayer. I feel like this is all pretty obvious, but just to quickly lay this out there, problem 1 with this is buying both of these map packs is 50% more expensive than buying the entire base game, campaign, multiplayer, and all, which is ridiculous. Problem B is these DLC maps divide the player base, so people with both map packs can only play people that also have both map packs, or at least that's how the game attempts to match players up anyway. And problem 3 is, because the player base is so small on Modern Warfare 2, people who bought these map packs back in the day, or even people that still buy them today in 2020, have a horrible matchmaking experience, specifically because of something that they purchased. Now think about that for a second. You buy Modern Warfare 2's map packs back in the day, you boot up Modern Warfare 2 here in 2020 hoping to play the game and all the content that you paid for, and you can't. You can't find a lobby because there aren't enough people playing the game that have the same DLC installed that you do. Now on paper, I will play devil's advocate for a second. On paper, that isn't actually a horrible thing because it makes sense for games to have a certain shelf life, right? And after a while, their population is going to die off. That's just kind of the natural cycle of most online video games. So on paper, that isn't inherently a bad thing. But in the case of Modern Warfare 2 and most of the other Call of Duty games, this is actually a horrible thing and it's all Activision's fault. It's because of Activision this is bad as compared to the normal progression of online video games. The reason why is because for years, Activision and subsequently Infinity Ward, Treyarch, Sledgehammer, all the developers, they allowed the older games to basically die off. In the case of Modern Warfare 2, Activision and Infinity Ward did not support the game whatsoever post-launch, and Modern Warfare 2, as a result, has become modded and hacked all to hell. After years of the game's online experience being tainted by cheaters and mods and infections and all that stuff, the game's population has shriveled down to almost nothing, despite Modern Warfare 2 still being regarded as one of the best games in the franchise, and fans even here in 2020 crying out for Activision to release a remaster of that game's multiplayer. The reason why fans love the game so much but they don't play it anymore is because modders and hackers have essentially ruined the game, and Activision did nothing at all to combat that. The reason why is because they don't care about Modern Warfare 2 anymore. It's an old game to them, right? They made their sales money, they broke their records, they sold their overpriced DLC maps and season passes, and they moved on, right? That's what they do pretty much every single year. And because of the insanely strenuous release cycle for Call of Duty and Activision's never-ending quest to appease their shareholders, all of the old games have been left in the dust to be overtaken by mods and infections, with Activision and the underlying Call of Duty studios doing absolutely nothing about it. Now, meanwhile, keep in mind, we still have things like the Black Ops 2 Season Pass being sold for $50. We have things like the Modern Warfare 2 and Black Ops 1 map packs also being sold for $15 a piece, and anyone who buys these things is essentially just throwing their money in the toilet. When you buy a DLC map for an old game, you're spending money on content that you literally will not be able to play in most cases, or if you can play it, those moments are going to be very few and far between. In most cases, it's in your best interest to not purchase any map packs for the older Call of Duty games because you're going to have a much harder time actually finding matches, and if you do find matches, those lobbies are going to be incredibly laggy because they're going to be stretched so thin, going across the entire world trying to find enough people with the right DLC installed to actually play against each other at that particular time of day, right? It's going to be really difficult to find those matches, yet you're still paying money for the privilege to have a really bad matchmaking experience where you may or may not be able to experience the content that you paid for. In most cases, it's in your best interest to just not purchase these map packs for the older Call of Duty games, and if you have also purchased them at one point, like way back in the day, it's also in your best interest to just uninstall all of that content that you paid for so that you have an easier time finding matches on games that oftentimes have a population of 20 to 500 people. It's actually so scummy what Activision's doing here. It's so scummy that they refused to support these older games whatsoever. They basically said, we made our money, screw them. If you still like those games, who cares? Move on to the new one. Forget all that money you spent. We're after more of it with the newer Call of Duty title. That's essentially what they're saying. And what makes it worse is they continue to charge such an obscene amount of money for DLC content that people likely won't even be able to use in the first place. I suppose it's a little bit different for Treyarch games because of zombies maps, but these map packs and season passes for the old Treyarch games are still full priced, keep in mind. They're charging just as much now for Black Ops 1 DLC maps as they did back in 2011, which makes no sense whatsoever. Like, just to give you a comparison here, you can buy Skyrim and play all of Skyrim for under $5, but if you want to play Shangri-La on Black Ops 1, you need to drop $15 on that map pack, or even more if you don't even own the game itself, which is just really silly when you think about it. Overall, I'm disappointed as to how the older Call of Duty games have aged over the years. It's disappointing that it's so difficult to enjoy the games that we loved from back in the day and the games that a lot of us grew up on, right? Like, I kind of grew up playing Call of Duty 4. I mean, in reality, I was like 16 when the game came out, but still, that was like a very influential game in my life that kind of led me to be where I am today on YouTube here, and going back to play COD 4 is ridiculously hard because the lobbies are so dead. Even Modern Warfare Remastered, for crying out loud. Like, I tried to go play Modern Warfare Remastered Search and Destroy, it's like 2v2 and 3v3 all the time because the game's player base is so dead, and it's because once a game is done, they stop supporting it altogether. We've been talking about DLC and map packs throughout the entirety of this video, but it's true of all of the older games, like games like Modern Warfare Remastered, Infinite Warfare, Call of Duty World War II. If you're not playing game modes like Team Deathmatch, good luck finding anything, because the player base on those games is so dead, and it's partly due to the fact, for the newer games anyway, that they refuse to update and support them. But for the older games, the reason why they're so dead is because they're so overrun by hackers, mods, and infections. I think that one way that Activision can try to make amends for the older games being so dead and it being their fault is to stop charging people for old DLC content and open it up for everybody. Imagine a world where all the map packs for games like Call of Duty 4, World at War, Modern Warfare 2, Black Ops 1, Modern Warfare 3, and Black Ops 2 all just become free for everybody and also become a mandatory install for players when they boot up the game. This would mean that everybody that bought DLC content back in the day could actually play the content that they paid for, and for the people that didn't buy the content back in the day, they could still experience some forgotten and oftentimes really good multiplayer maps that they otherwise never would have seen. This would unify the player base on each game and would populate every game mode much more so than it is right now, and matchmaking would also be a lot smoother because we would not have this weird situation where if you're playing Black Ops 1, for example, and you only have DLC 1 installed because you want to play that zombies map, and you find yourself in this weird situation where you can only play against other people that also only have DLC 1 installed. There's so many of these discrepancies when it comes to how this all gets put together. Matchmaking is such a mess on the older Call of Duty titles, and by making it so all the DLC maps are free for everybody and a mandatory download so everybody has to have them to play those games, it would make matchmaking a lot smoother. And I also feel like the announcement of every old Call of Duty suddenly having all of its DLC become free and a mandatory install would drive massive amounts of players back to those older games, which would be fantastic for those of us who actually enjoy the older Call of Duty titles. Now, of course, we will still have a situation where hackers and modders can still ruin the experience for others, but with a much more populated game, those degenerate losers are not going to have the same impact on the game as they do currently. And who knows? Maybe after a while, after they realize they're not having such an impact on the game anymore, they'll finally go outside, maybe interact with some other humans, and stop getting left on red all the time. I don't know about you guys, but I would just love for the older Call of Duty titles to not be in the state that they currently are. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm stoked for Black Ops Cold War. I cannot wait to play the beta. I'm going to be streaming it over on Twitch on Thursday, and I'll likely have my review of the beta going up on my channel on Friday, and I can't wait to try out all the new stuff and the new changes. I'm always excited about the future of the Call of Duty franchise, but at the same time, that's exactly what Activision wants, right? They want us always looking towards the future because that's where the real money is. That's where new games are. That's where new battle passes are and new microtransactions. And all the while, the games that got the Call of Duty franchise to where it is today are left to die a slow, sad death. And that was the focus of today's video. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have for you guys here today. It's kind of a somber one if you really think about it, but still, I think it's an important thing to discuss. I'd love to hear what you guys think down in the comments. I hope you guys all enjoyed the video. If you did, consider leaving a like. Thank you all so much for listening, and I hope you guys all have a wonderful day.